Good morning. Welcome to the Mayor's Weekly, and we're pleased to be with you this morning. And what we're going to talk about today, and Brent McCarver, our city planner, is joining us because he's an integral part of what we're going to talk about. You hear us talk often about the core functions of this city: police, fire, public works, that sort of thing. But there are two functions in city government that not talked about much. Both of these functions are staffed in total by volunteers, but their work is tremendously important to the city, and we're so thankful for the volunteers that will step forward and serve in these capacities. And over the last, I'll say, month, we've had questions arise about these entities. Good questions, valid questions. People just want to know, and they're entitled to know the function, the authorities, how they come to be, and what they do. And so this morning's program is going to be devoted to talking about our Planning Commission and our Zoning Board. Both of these entities work hand in hand with our city planner. Again, these folks that serve on these committees are volunteers. They're not paid one penny. We'll talk about how they come about, how these folks end up serving on these committees and function on their, and what authorities they have. Brent, let's start with the Planning Commission, and as I said, you work hand in hand with these folks. Planning Commission is something that is established by city ordinance long before our time by the city, at the city. And how many members on that?
There's 9 members on the Planning Commission, and actually both the Zoning Board that we'll get to and the Planning Commission, they're established by the Alabama Code, Section 11, Part 52. So each city, we won't get off into it, but you know there's different types or sizes of city within the state. Each city has a prescribed amount. We fall into the Planning Commission as a 9-member board. Then, of course, there is a city ordinance that constitutes or regulates what they do. So under the state code, we have a Planning Commission. Those 9 members are appointed at large by the mayor.
And say that again. Appointed at large. It doesn't mirror the district.
No, the commission does not. The mayor appoints. You have one representative of your city council by Alabama code, and one what's called mayor designee, which would either be the mayor, or in almost all cities, the mayor appoints someone to that position, and then the other 7 are appointed at large at the mayor's discretion.
Serve how long, Brent?
They serve 2-year terms, and of course the mayor designee and the city council members serve the term of their election, so 4 years on those 2. And it rotates around in general. I have checked around. It's kind of best practices, unless you have a real reason, just simply because of knowledge, experience. It's generally a good idea to sort of reappoint the same people because they get a good idea of what they're doing. So sometimes you have folks that serve pretty good time, but it's 2-year term, and then the elected part of it, the mayor's designee and the councilman would serve out their election term period.
Yeah. Now, well, let's talk about what these folks do and what authority they have. And I think what we know is they don't have any authority. They only make recommendations. Is that right?
Exactly right. It does get confusing because of the name. The Planning Commission has oversight and regulatory, what's called in the code, regulatory recommendation power based on the existing city ordinances.
But the key word is recommendation.
Recommendation. What they do is there is a 20-year comprehensive plan for the city of Jasper.
Right.
That was done in.
I'm sorry if I keep running.
No, you're fine.
Our 20-year plan is fairly new, isn't it?
Yes,
it's probably a couple of years old.
Adopted in 2020.
2020.
So it would be, we're about nearly, I guess, what is that? We're 4 years into it. But that 20-year plan lays out a long-term growth, where you'd want residences, where you want commercial, that type thing, and those are called, within the city, they're called zones. We have manufacturing, we have agricultural, we have residential. The Planning Commission's first job is to know that plan, know what the idea is, and then all zoning questions come before that Planning Commission. For example, in the city of Jasper, if you wanted to buy a multi-section manufactured home, you can only place that in an R3 or R2 or agricultural. So if you lived in a zone that was not one of those, you would come before the Planning Commission and request a rezoning. They would hold the public hearing. They would look at everything. We get plat maps. We contact all of the adjoining property owners. We publish it in the newspaper 15 days prior to the hearing. We put a sign up on the property that says there's a hearing. And then the Planning Commission holds that public hearing, pros and cons or whatever, and then they vote to rezone or not to rezone. Then
Let's do this and
Sure.
I understand. So, and we want manufactured housing is an important part of housing
Yes.
people, whatever. But as you said, a manufactured housing can be located upon approval in these certain areas, and
Yes.
if it falls outside that, it's a no-no.
Yes.
Unless they can get something rezoned.
Right.
So, somebody, and we'll go to R1, which is a standard residential. If somebody wanted to place a manufactured home in a R1 zoning, that cannot happen unless this commission makes a recommendation to rezone that.
Correct.
And then we'll talk about how that flows upstream to the ultimate authority.
Right.
Okay.
And what would happen in that case, the way I get involved, generally, in any instance, you're going to start with a building permit. The first part of the building permit application is I sign off on the zoning. So if, let's just take you for instance, if you came to me, said we're going to put this multi-section home here, and I look and say, well, that's an R1 zone, and I would have to deny it. So your opportunity is you can go request a rezoning, then you would go to the Planning Commission to do so. And if they rezone it, then what happens is, and you get into all kinds of, it's pretty intense how you have to handle it, but within 30 days of their recommendation, it comes before the City Council. The City Council is actually, and this is where people really need to understand, is the body that approves or disapproves. What comes to the council from the Planning Commission is simply a recommendation. It is not law. It is not set in stone. Council can approve it. They can disapprove it. As with most things in government, the whole point of the Planning Commission is advisory to the mayor and the council, in the fact that the assumption made is the Planning Commission did all the research and all that ahead of time. So most times the council and mayor are going to follow suit because that they've put everything before the Planning Commission, but certainly don't have to. And it is, again, not a law, I guess is the word we'd use, until the council approves it.
Okay. Now, Brent, we talk about these folks making recommendations. They're not subordinates to the mayor.
Nope.
Because the mayor appoints them. The mayor doesn't appoint them and line them all up and say, you vote this way, you vote that way. The mayor stays away from that. They have full latitude to employ their judgment.
Yes.
Is that what you've seen?
Yes, sir. And I'll tell you, since being there and involved with this, it works really well. Very rarely, you can speak to this, but when it starts with me and ends up with the Planning Commission, we really don't even engage your office or the council prior to it going through the commission. It's not like I even call over here and say, hey, we're going to meet on this or meet on that. You're informed just like the public is. And so I think that works well because it doesn't get into, this person wants that or this person wants this, and you're really informed about it after the fact, just like everybody else.
This body does no rule writing for the city.
No,
Okay.
they do not.
Good. Now, let's move on to the zoning board, and that has a little different flavor and how they end up in place, and talk about that.
Zoning board is also set by the same section of Alabama code, and the zoning board is what's called quasi-judicial. So if you think in terms of the court system, or in our form of government, the judicial side, the zoning board hears and approves or disapproves of any special exception, variance, hardship ruling based on the codes of the city as it relates
Brent,
to real
let me ask you
estate.
this, and I don't want to muddy the water.
No.
You used the word variance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we talked just a minute ago about those could go to the planning commission and seek rezoning. Now, we got rezoning, we got variance. That's two different things, is it?
Completely different thing.
Uh,
Within, using the same example, let's say you're going to put that manufactured home in an R3. So you were zoned for manufactured housing. Each zone, whether it be industrial, commercial, residential, has its own setbacks, things called supplemental use, different things like that. So, for example, if your manufactured home is going to be 12 feet from the side property line, in that zone, you have to be 15 feet from each one. That's your setback. You have the opportunity, because I'm going to tell you can't put it there. You come out and figure out, well, my property's not big enough. So then you would have the opportunity to go before the zoning board of adjustments and ask for a variance to the existing rule to encroach those 3 feet to that side line. That's a real easy example. More times than not, zoning board here is commercial. You know, we have a development coming in, the property they bought. There's a lot of restrictions based on how we let commercials develop. You know, one that comes to mind that's really recent, the canopy that goes over a gas station, the gas pump island, was going to be 16 feet from the back line. Now the canopy, not what's on the ground, the canopy, that is actually encroaching on the 20-foot setback. So they had to come before the zoning board in order to get ready to build this gas station, convenience store, and get a variance to allow that canopy to cross that 20-foot line, even though it's in the air. So that's what zoning board hears, is a special exception, and I had to learn this, would be something along the lines that our ordinance is causing an undue hardship on someone, a property owner, like some of our city lots, city houses being older, the lots themselves are not really big in width. Let's say you have a handicapped person that needs to build something to access their house, and that's going to encroach or whatever, so that could be a special exception because it's causing a hardship on the owner. There's several different things, but the main thing to think there is zoning board does not come to the council or mayor. A zoning board is a final decision unless you want to appeal it, and if you did, you go to circuit court. It's a judicial thing.
Okay. Well, now, we talk about the judicial thing. Let's talk about what makes it. How do those board members get in place?
They are appointed by, actually, and I really did some research because I was thinking last night, our council appoints our zoning board based on council district.
So every council district's represented
Every
there,
council
and
district.
we have one backup member.
We have one, and they call it, under state code, it's called a supernumerary, because that person could fill in for any district regardless of where they live, but it's basically an alternate. So there's 6 members of that board.
Okay.
And the mayor, honestly, the mayor's not involved even in the appointment of that board. I would go directly to the council.
I don't
member.
have a switch where
No.
I can reverse their decision or
No, sir.
whatever. Now, Brent, let's touch a little bit on this, and then we'll wrap up. We have an industrial park in our city, and I read our city Facebook, and somebody made the comment that nobody should be allowed to build in the industrial park unless they paid a minimum rate of compensation. Now, we don't control any of that, do we? And the industrial park has its own.
Yeah, the industrial park is under an M3 zone. There would be two zones in the city that are what I'd call location specific. B4 is commercial, and B4 is specifically running alongside, give or take some area, I-22. It's interstate development. So it has, for example, something there, your interstate signs are a lot taller than we'd allow on 118, those kind of things. The other one is M3, that's manufacturing 3. Manufacturing 3 is specific to what is currently Jasper or Bevel Industrial Park. Now, we have other industrial. We have M1 and M2, and they can be in other places. M3 relates specifically to the industrial park, and one of the things you have there is code requirements in the M3 are subject to the Jasper Industrial Development Board, to be really honest. Now, I'm involved, or our office planning is involved, but, for example, talking about those variances, if a $50 million investment company is coming to Jasper, and because you have large sites, like a 50-acre site, and they're cutting out 10 acres to develop, they don't have to go through the same subdivision process that you would outside of the industrial park, simply for time. Now, the industrial board, our executive director, Green Suttles, would work with me. We're in the same building, and of course you're involved in the council. It's not something where everything's just willy-nilly, but it allows industrial development to happen at a little quicker speed than going through the planning commission or anything like that. And they have oversight for the industrial board, by the industrial board. So that M3 is a little different, but no, we don't regulate wages or anything like that.
But the approval of that doesn't come to the council.
No,
the industrial development board, they have their own zone and covenants, whatever.
Right.
They handle all of that.
Exactly.
And none of that addresses compensation or that sort of thing.
No,
so, covered a lot of stuff, a lot of meat in this. It's not easy to understand, and we, as I said earlier, we've had some questions, very good questions, valid questions, and if what we've talked about this morning creates confusion or falls short of helping you in your understanding of the function of these two entities, we stand ready to talk with you and share what information that you may need. But both of them are important functions. Those volunteers, time to time, they take arrows in the back, and we thank them for doing that. But that's just part of it. But it's a group of Jasper folks making the best decisions they can make for Jasper, Alabama, and I have to say that they have an exemplary track record.
And Mayor, I wanted something too, because we actually got a phone call yesterday in our office about it. Both of these entities meet. The Planning Commission meets the third Thursday of every month at 5 p.m. The Zoning Board meets as needed, because obviously they don't have as many requests, but it also is the third Thursday of every month at 9 a.m. And under state law, we're required to, and we do, the agendas for these meetings must be published 15 days prior to either one of these hearings. And because we have a local newspaper, it is published in the Mountain Eagle. Any adjoining property owners, either commission, will get a letter from our office, and a sign will be put on the spot notifying you that there's a public hearing. So we got a call the other day about, we don't ever know about these hearings. So we're doing that. We're following the law. If you're interested in that, they're open to the public, but kind of watch the classifieds of the Mountain Eagle is the best thing I can tell you. Or if you see signs, they've got red little border around them, and they'll tell you when we meet. But the third Thursday of every month, the Planning Commission meets.
Right, good. Well, Brent, thank you for joining me this morning. Again, we stand ready to answer any question you may have, and again, don't hesitate to call on us if we've generated confusion or what we've talked about falls short of enlightening you at the level you want to be enlightened. And again, I commend both entities for the work they do, and I thank the volunteers for being willing to commit their time and make this happen for the city. So glad to have you with us, and we'll look forward to being with you next week.